Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
Pack up your stuff. I got a little surprise for you here. Check it out. What do you think about that?
We got real-time, 3D, lush organic environments.
How's that make you feel, buddy? Feel a little like your days are numbered?
I'm gonna have to ask you to leave.
You're hurting my elbow.
Is that Italian?
That's some really bold talk. I mean, Crash Bandicoot is great, but the game had nothing on Mario 64. Okay, so even though the PlayStation had a pretty big jump on the Nintendo 64, which didn't come to market until a few months later, Nintendo came out swinging with their launch game, Super Mario 64, which set new standards for the 3D platformer and basically blew away anything else that was on the market at the time. And even now, it still holds up as one of the best video games of all time. So, PlayStation realized pretty quickly that they were going to need a mascot platformer to compete with Super Mario 64. And thankfully, they had a small up-and-coming studio that you guys have probably heard of working on just one of those games. That studio was Naughty Dog, and that game was Crash Bandicoot. So, in Crash Bandicoot, you take the role of the eponymous Bandicoot, who is a genetic experiment created by the evil Dr. Cortex. Unfortunately, the experiment turns out to be a failure, and Crash is thrown out like garbage, and now he has to make his way back to Dr. Cortex's lair in order to rescue a female Bandicoot that he has a liking for, before she is subjected to the same genetic experiments that made Crash what he is. The plot of Crash Bandicoot is pretty basic. It's once again one of those games where story is a little more than context. But one thing you gotta give Crash Bandicoot credit for is that it's got a lot of personality. The game has a very wacky and zany, almost Tex Avery style to its presentation with the exaggerated character models, facial features, and everything. And it really does work. This was still the time of the mascot platformer where it seems like every studio was trying to make something along the lines of the Blue Blur, with characters with a bad attitude and all that stuff. But Crash didn't really go for that. Now, it's not to say that the game doesn't have an attitude, but it has a more goofy tone to it, which I really appreciate. And that's also reflected in the music too, which is what you're listening to now. It's kind of a odd mix of Aboriginal music, funk, and just... It's hard to describe, but it fits really well with the tone of Crash Bandicoot. As for the presentation in general, it's also really good. This was one of the first games to really push the PlayStation to its limits, and I still think it holds up pretty well today. Though some of the character models can certainly look a little noodly, the level design is great. It's very lush, it's very vibrant. It's just a pretty strong game overall. Runs pretty well too. As for gameplay though, during development, Naughty Dog affectionately referred to the game as the Sonic's ass game, and the reason for that was they took a very pragmatic approach to making a 3D platformer. They figured that with a 2D side-scroller, you're basically just watching the character go from side to side, so if you want to make a 3D platformer, you rotate the camera and have the character run forward, which causes you to be looking at the character's ass, hence the Sonic's ass game. And looking at the game, you can kind of see that. A lot of the gameplay in Crash is basically just making your way through sort of these 3D hallways, avoiding hazards, trying to avoid falling into bottomless pits, and fighting off enemies as they come at you. It's a pretty basic approach to 3D, all things considered. And considering that it was having to go up against Super Mario 64, it does come off as just a little bit primitive. But at the same time, there's still enough depth and nuance to it to where it feels like a more compelling game than you would think. This isn't like Bug back on the Sega Saturn where the 3D element was just really shallow. That being said, the controls are a little on the clunky side. Crash's weight feels a little off, and you're having to play the game with a D-pad, which just feels really weird in 3D. It's something you get used to at the time, but I wouldn't necessarily call the controls here particularly stellar. It's also a ball-bustingly hard game, especially later in the game. The save system also kind of sucks. You have to actually complete bonus levels in order to save in the first place, as opposed to just the levels saving automatically as they should. And the boss fights are, well, they're more video gamey than they are dynamic. They don't really feel like fights, more like just these oddball puzzles. Still, though, they are worse 3D platformers you can play from this time, but there are also much better ones as well. And the much better ones are definitely the sequels. Thankfully, Crash was an extremely successful game, one of the best-selling on the PlayStation, so of course there were going to be sequels. The first one was Crash Bandicoot 2 Quartet Strikes Back, which is a marked improvement over the first game. The presentation is better, the story is a little bit more interesting, the graphics are great, and best of all, the controls are much better. It feels really smooth, Crash's weight is fantastic, and a lot of the bullshit that made the first game so hard has been done away with, for the most part. And they would further refine it with Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, which is, in my opinion, the best 3D platformer on the original PlayStation. It also happens to be one of my all-time favorite video games, so if you can only play one Crash Bandicoot game, this is the one I recommend the most. Its controls aren't that much different from Crash Bandicoot 2. The time travel aspect of the plot just makes for so much level variety that it never feels like you're playing the same stage twice. It's just so good. There were some other Crash games on the PlayStation as well. The most famous one outside of the trilogy would probably have to be Crash Team Racing, which is one of the few kart races from the time that you could actually go head-to-head with Mario Kart. This was a really popular racing game back in the day. I even remember myself knowing about it, even though I was strictly an N64 kid. And it still holds up really well. A really good racing game, so be sure to check that out. There was also this oddball an oddball party game called Crash Bash, though that isn't giving Mario Party a run for its money anytime soon, so don't feel like you have to check that one out. The Crash series was super popular, so because of that, Sony was eager to bring Naughty Dog in as a second-party developer for them, and they would go on to make all kinds of great games like Jak and Daxter, Uncharted, and The Last of Us. However, because Naughty Dog developed Crash Bandicoot for Universal Interactive, they weren't allowed to take the Bandicoot with them when they parted ways with them. So, unfortunately, Crash would be handed off to some other developers who were never able to capture the same magic as the original PlayStation games. They certainly tried, but it wasn't long before Crash Bandicoot faded into obscurity. He would, however, make a comeback, though, with the outstanding Insane trilogy, which was so popular it led to Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, which was one of the best 3D platformers in recent memory. So if you haven't had a chance to play that one, be sure to check it out, because it really is great. You would think this would mean that it's time for a steady string of Crash Bandicoot games, but for whatever reason, there hasn't been another Crash game since It's About Time, apart from Crash Nitro Fuel, but Nitro Kart or Nitro Fuel, whatever the kart racing remake was called. But yeah, there hasn't been any more games in the series, and I'm not exactly sure why, because as far as I know, the Insane trilogy and It's About Time did really well. My guess is that with Activision being bought out by Microsoft and Microsoft being more interested in shooters like Call of Duty and what have you, they probably don't have a tremendous deal of interest in Crash Bandicoot, which is a darn shame because they could definitely use some star power over on the Xbox. It's the same thing that they've always done with their console, like, get some damn exclusives on your console, guys. You have Spyro too, but, you know, that's a rant for another day. But Yeah, Crash Bandicoot, it was a great series. One of the best on PlayStation. Again, if you're going to play one of these games, I recommend Crash Bandicoot Ward, but you can't go wrong with any of these games, outside of maybe Crash Bash. But anyway, that's going to do it for this one, guys, and I'll see you next time.